I deleted Instagram back in November, and honestly, one of the best decisions I've made. Granted, I have made more important decisions, but oh my gosh, what a brilliant decision. It was just a time vacuum, an attention vacuum, and took up more space in my mind than I would ever care to admit. However, if anybody knows me, they know that I love a good meme, and no longer having Instagram wasn't going to stop me from getting my fix. And you see, Pinterest and I have been locked in. We've been in a devoted relationship for over 10 years at this point, so it's only natural that, failing all other avenues, I'd come across memes on Pinterest as well, and that today is what we're going to be analysing. And first up, we have this one. Reads, "What if I flop? Oh, but my darling, what if you eat?" And from that, you can see it's evidently an adaptation of a different post that I presume was supposed to give off similar inspirational, motivational vibes. And although flop and eat are used within this same post together, I think it is worth noting that flop definitely, as a word, has a longer lifespan than eat, which I feel has come about in the mainstream a lot more recently than to flop. And just as a courtesy translation to those who aren't familiar with these two terms, this post is essentially asking, "What if I fail?" And the response is, "Oh, but my darling, what if you succeed?" And so, it's supposed to have a sort of uplifting effect on the reader. And I can attest to that for sure. And when it comes to the messaging of this post, of this image that's been created by a user, this really resonates with me in as far as, questioning, what's the point? Maybe I shouldn't attempt this venture, or maybe, this hobby, this activity interests me, yet I'm scared to try it. But, it's so important to have that inner voice that will speak up in response to that self-doubt and ask, well, what if you succeed? Because obviously the odds are, in a sort of balance, and if in any case, a lot of the time they're skewed more towards your favor. And so what we get from this post is this internal conversation with self, where self-doubt is speaking first, and that reassurance from self comes up and asks, well, what if you eat? And, that being highlighted in the hot pink there really sends home to the reader that the fruits of your attempts can be so beneficial and so impactful, and there's so much that you could be missing out on by letting that self-doubt win over that self-confidence and that inner voice that spurs you on to try or to pursue what you really are after, what you're interested in. I think it also sort of sends home a message of, or rather softly delivers a message of how, being sort of risk averse in these situations where there isn't much at stake at all, and being afraid of flopping, how the gains from siding with that risk aversion and not trying the thing that you're interested in for the sake of preserving your ego, the benefits are minute in comparison to what you might gain by trying that thing and realizing that you ate. Hence, eat being in that hot pink, bold, big text. It's intentionally formatted in this way to bring that to the fore of one's subconscious upon laying eyes on this meme. And now that we've addressed the content, and before we move on to the next one, I also want to address the imagery. And while we touched on the font and the colour of the words flop and eat and the significance of that in this meme, I think also what helps get this message across, and actually coaxes the reader into adopting this frame of mind is, of course, the scenic imagery in the background. Seeing that water and the blue skies, it's calming. It's calming, and it takes you to another place, and it opens up your mind's eye as though the horizon stands before you rather than being cornered in a little box where you don't want to step out of your comfort zone. Just thought that was worth mentioning. Now, on to the next one. And so here we have meme number 2, which reads, I bring a sort of limitlessness vibe to life that people still locked inside their limiting beliefs don't really like. Now, what do we like about this one, and what's it trying to put across to us? Well, now one of the first things I notice is that first word, limitlessness, and it's quite strong. It's quite an extreme word in what it encompasses, which is being without bounds, which can be quite uncomfortable to sit with when you're not in that place or in a position to really relate to this sentiment and this idea of limitlessness and this limitlessness vibe that is brought to life, which is what this meme is communicating. And immediately, once challenged by this idea, that line that says people still locked inside their limiting beliefs don't really like, feels almost like an attack. You feel seen if you're in that frame of mind outside of that limitlessness consciousness. And so it does make the reader, I've found myself, in a position where you're having to reckon with your state of mind and whether you are in that camp of people still locked inside their limiting beliefs, and makes you challenge whether you are living your life with that vibe in mind, that vibe of limitlessness. And for me, although I see myself and am largely perceived by people who know me as being, quite free-spirited in a way, or, wanting to reap as much from life as possible and, have fun while I do it, it still makes me question, am I still operating within these confines of safety that I know and these boundaries that I've tried and tested, but not trying to, push beyond them further to reach that state of limitlessness, where I can bring that vibe to my life myself from within. I've literally just come back from holiday, and yet this meme makes me wonder, am I doing enough? Am I holding myself back? Why am I not working remotely from a different country this week? How come I didn't think to do that? Was I just trying to play it safe, or am I in the right place? It does bring some of those things to be challenged to the fore. Overall, I like the sentiment of this piece, and I enjoy the introspection that it encourages from the reader. Okay, so next we have a screenshot turned meme, which is often the format anyway, and it reads hashtag WhoGAF, hashtag NonIssue, hashtag WhatDoesItHaveToDoWithMe, and I am a big fan of this one. This is true to life for me. One of my favourite acronyms ever is IDGAF because it's fun to say, and also, even if I do care, and even if something does kind of bother me, it's empowering, actually, and kind of edifying to just be like, IDGAF. It's because it's almost encapsulated within that acronym that you really don't care enough even to form a full sentence to get across the fact that the lioness does not concern herself with this matter. You know what I mean? I would say hashtag non-issue is one that will be added to my repertoire. I like that one, and I think it is, quite widely applicable and can be used in real life with a variety of different people without it sounding too internet speak, like, if you know what I mean. Like, I could use this at work, and it wouldn't really be outside the realms of professional language use or whatever the hell, as if I care. Anyway, and that brings me on to the third one. Hashtag what does it have to do with me? Love that, because this is one that is very true to me and true to the sentiments that I hold in real life. Because truly, what does it have to do with me? Because once you've asked that question and you've found, you've asked that question to yourself or to somebody else, or to a situation, to an inanimate object, something that is an inconvenience, once you've asked that question, you can receive the answer and determine your response from that. And instead of becoming flustered and flabbergasted and your heart rates up over what? Over nothing. Hashtag what does it have to do with me? Oh, nothing? Cool. Then nothing's changed for me. Do you know what I mean? Straight to the point, cuts the BS, get on with your day. Anyways, that's it for today. I really enjoyed looking through these memes and giving you all a piece of my mind. I will definitely be doing this again, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye!